Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Parishscope. This is the podcast that kind of works with our newsletter at St. John's Lutheran Church, the Parishscope. I'm Pastor Chris Sansom.
And I'm Casey Dreamus. I'm the contemporary TPG at the church.
DPG. We got that one down.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it stands for, if I'm really honest. It's been a few weeks.
Something guy.
Director something.
But it's the best we could come with because I didn't really have we never really said.
Well, it's official now.
Title.
I mean, I feel like at this point it is official. You know?
Yeah, it really is now.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I like
get business cards now.
You should. You should get business cards. Oh man. Well, so it's been a couple weeks, and Casey, you and I were just talking about how it feels like it's been forever.
Yeah, it does.
It hasn't. It's only been a couple weeks, but it just feels like it's just been such a long time. In that time, though, we had Halloween. We celebrated All Saints Day. So I mean, we've had a lot of things kind of going on. I know I've been incredibly busy just with everything. You know what I hate? I hate it whenever I get really busy.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm just going everywhere. Like every time I turn around, I feel like I need to be here. I need to be here.
Right.
And then somebody will stop and say, well, what are you busy with? And you're trying to think back and you're like,
oh, well, you can't remember.
Well, not only can you not remember, but it feels so not important after, you're just like, well, I mean, I was gone all day yesterday, but I can't remember.
You're right.
Like, what are you busy with, Pastor? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's why we saw our neighbors. We were talking to our neighbors today, and they were like, "Well, how was your guys' weekend?" Because we had my son's birthday party on Friday.
Yeah,
and they were over, and they go, and I'm like, we had a busy weekend, and they're like, "What happened?" I'm like, I don't remember. And it was, but then when my wife got home, it was like, oh yeah, she was gone all day Saturday for this like music thing, and then Sundays are always kind of busy, and then Monday she had a pep band game. It was like, oh right, yeah, but I couldn't remember why or what we had. I just remembered, like we've been really, really busy. Yeah,
exactly.
Just how it is.
It is. It is. I've been insanely busy as well, but again, couldn't tell you. I mean, I know, for instance, Sunday was a big day. Sunday we had church. Obviously, that lasted till about 11:45, noonish, something like that. Matthew Barrett was installed as the pastor at St. Paul's in Manitou. Now St. Paul's in Manitou and Trinity Manitou, sorry. Yeah. They combined to become a dual parish. And so
cool.
Pastor Barrett was already a pastor over at Trinity.
Oh, okay.
And then he became and was installed as the pastor at St. Paul's. So that was at 3:00, and I needed to be there by 2:30. I didn't make it. I was like 3 minutes late. But anyway, so I had that going. And then I had a new member class that evening. So I ended up getting home, having just enough time to eat, and then getting out there so I could do the new member class. And so, I came home at like 8-something o'clock.
Yeah,
I was just
whipping.
I was just like dead to the world. And I was like, man, But again, now that's a day I can actually remember. Like, okay, that's all this. But like a lot of these times, I'm just like, man, I'm just driving everywhere, and I just
right.
I'm so busy. I got to be here. But then ask me 2 days later, and I'm like, I don't know. I was doing something. Right. I don't remember what it was, but I was doing something. So
yeah. I don't think my brain has the ability. I have a bad memory, I don't know if bad memory or I'm just forgetful is the right term, because there's certain things I remember really well. But I'm very forgetful.
I remember years ago I read a book on memory because, of course, I wanted to improve my memory.
Right.
And one of the things that the book said, now it was a little dated. I probably still have it on my bookshelf, to be honest with you, somewhere. I don't even know where, but it was a little bit dated. I think it was written in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. I can't remember, but yeah. The big point of the book was, outside of some medical issue, everybody can have a good memory. The problem, again, at least they argued in the book, the problem isn't so much that we have a bad memory, but that we forget where we store stuff.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting because he talked about how, they had done brain surgery, and when they stuck needles inside people's brains, and yes, I know that just sounds frightening, but I mean, they do all these experiments, and,
right.
They have open brain surgery and all this stuff. But what they found is that when they did that, people would go all the way back to a memory, and it wasn't it wasn't even like they would just like vaguely remember something, but it was like in some cases the person would describe it like they were right there.
Yeah.
Like even it could have been a memory from when they were childhood, like from their childhood, like they remember what the smell is. They remember exactly every aspect, like it's really there.
Yeah.
And what they concluded was that the brain actually stores everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The brain just stores absolutely everything. And so the problem isn't that we have a bad memory. The problem is you don't know where your brain stored that information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can't access it, then it's like you don't have it.
Right. Yeah.
If you can figure out a way to access that memory bank, then you actually have a fabulous memory.
Mm-hmm.
A famous person who made inroads into China by the name of Matteo Ricci, he actually did this thing. He called it the Mind Palace, and I don't think he was the one that came up with it. They had in the old world, they didn't actually have phones. I don't know if everybody knows this, but mobile phones are rather new.
That's right.
Yeah, so they didn't have Google. Google wasn't around back then either.
Listen, I grew up through the dark ages. I didn't get a cell phone until I was a junior in high school. And my brothers were ticked because they didn't get one until they graduated high school.
And I didn't have one until I was a senior in college.
I know.
College. But anyway, but Matteo Ricci had this idea of a mind palace, and that was actually how he made inroads into China, because he actually memorized all the symbols for the entire Chinese language, and then he ended up memorizing them all, learning Chinese very, very fast, and then he actually memorized all of Confucius. And at the time, your place in society was based on how well you knew Confucius.
Interesting.
And so this guy in like 2-3 years, like pretty much memorized all of Confucius, to the point where he was actually giving their scholars a run for their money.
Oh, yeah.
And made a lot of heavy inroads into China because of this. And so it's like this really interesting thing. But what he did is he called it a mind palace. And basically he described it like, in his mind, he talked about it like a palace, and he could walk through the palace and he could go to a room and the room was just filled with drawers. And he would actually mentally place something in a drawer, and then he'd always remember to go back to that drawer.
Interesting.
And it was a way for him to categorize his brain. And it's a tactic that a lot of books will still suggest using today.
Interesting.
They say it takes a lot of time because you have to like construct your mind house or your mind palace.
Yeah.
And then you have to make sure you go to it like several times a day, every single day, so that you get used to where it is and what rooms are here. And,
crazy. Yeah.
they say like, it could be as easy as like just saying like, pretend like you have a porch swing. Well, put something on the porch swing. Believe it or not, you'll remember it. As long as you go to that porch swing all the time, you'll eventually get to the point where if you set something on that swing in your mind, you'll remember what you said on it.
Very interesting. There's a guy who, and I can't remember his name. I wish I did, but he's sort of, I don't know if you call him famous, but he is well known in the sort of like spoken poetry world, like that stuff. But he is a storyteller.
Sure.
And he tells stories. He goes up and he tells a 7-minute story or 6-minute story. And honestly, every single one I've watched of his they're all like, I don't know. You get through them, you're like, wow, that was incredible. Like, you don't even know this guy, but for some reason, that story, wow, that was great.
Yeah.
He's really good. But his one of the things he said is that what he does is he has a spreadsheet that he just, like a Excel spreadsheet or Google spreadsheet, and he literally has the dates, just like, November 1st down, all the way through the year, and he'll every day go in and he'll write like a snippet of something. So if it's like, something like his son said something today that really caught him off guard, and it made him think about this, he'll try to simplify that into one, like as few words as possible.
Sure.
And then when he goes through and he looks at that list, he's like, when I see every single thing on there, I can remember the full story.
Yeah.
Everything about it.
Yeah.
And I started doing that. I didn't keep up with it, but I did that for like a couple months, and every time I open that up, every once in a while I'll go, oh man, I need to start doing that. I'll open up and I'll look through those, and I remember everything. Yeah, and it's so weird, and I wish I was better at that, because you have to be really diligent about doing it every day. Yeah, but I mean, there's so many little things that's like something that really inspired you at the time. Yeah, you kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, and what they've discovered actually is with some of these studies is that like people that have what we would call photographic memory, what they do is they have a really good cataloging system. And it's just kind of, for them, it's just kind of a naturally occurring thing. But usually if you push them far enough, they'll eventually kind of let you in on how they do it. And usually it's something they're not even thinking about.
Yeah.
Again, that's kind of the born gift that they have, is that they naturally just do it. And it's so a part of them that they don't even really think about it. But that's why they have the quote unquote photographic, or I think it's called eidetic memory or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's that. I mean, again, fascinating side topic. That was not what I was going to start this podcast with, but at the same time, it was like, it is an interesting thing.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah.
Again, I need to read like a more modern book, because like I said, this one was like, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
How much has the study advanced in that time? I'm curious now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The last book I read was about big bands from the 20s, and nothing's changed in the last 70 years. So that book's pretty accurate.
Nothing has changed.
It's all the same.
Absolutely nothing's changed.
But do you have a topic for the day?
Well, I tell you what, every time, we start this podcast, I always look at like the headlines, like see what's going on. And, I'll be honest. I know we've already kind of handled the Palestine Israel stuff, but let's face it, it's everywhere. It's going on. Like we're seeing, you're starting to see a lot more, even inside of America, you're beginning to see a lot more groups and protests and all that kind of stuff. And so I actually did want to take at least a little bit of a moment to kind of stop for a second and pause and just actually kind of think this through a little bit. Now, so for those of you that are, just don't pay attention to the news, or maybe you do and you can't remember, but on October 7th, I said October, like
October.
Yeah. It's a new month. No, on October 7th, Hamas from the Gaza Strip led a massive, for them, what would be considered a massive attack on Israel. And it was brutal and it was awful. And since then, other nations have kind of joined into this attack. And then, for what it's worth, Israel kind of attacked back, especially in the Gaza Strip. And you're seeing a lot of people get kind of riled up. And some people on the Palestinian side are basically saying, hey, Israel deserved this. The occupation, that's what they kind of call it. They believe that Israel is occupying their land. And so you kind of get into this whole thing. And then Israel is basically saying, hey, they led an attack and we have to retaliate. And that brings us into the question of like, what is just warfare? Is there such a thing? And can you have it? And this kind of takes us all the way back. Like this was a huge topic, of course, in America after 9/11, September 11th. A lot of pastors did Bible studies on, hey, what is just war, and can you engage in it, and what's that all about? And it basically takes us all the way back to the Pauline letters in Romans, specifically Romans, where he actually talks about how the government wields a sword, and it wields a sword given to it by God for a reason. And that sword can be used. And so while you can't go out and retaliate, if somebody does an injustice to you, you need to get the law involved, the police, fire emergencies, and all that kind of stuff. A country, if an injustice is done to it, has the right and the ability to protect itself and to wield a sword. And so the question is Israel doing that? And what's all this about, like, Palestinian occupation and all that kind of stuff? Well, obviously, it's a murky history. Yes. It's a murky history, and basically it goes all the way back to World War II. After World War II, they were kind of basically the Jewish people that were left after the Holocaust were kind of given a country in a sense by the United Nations. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize: there has never been a Palestinian nation ever. There's just never been a nation that was like, this is Palestine.
Interesting.
There were people that lived there, but Britain owned the land. And so Britain, in a kind of a way to give peace, actually gave the land to the Jews for them to settle on. Now, again, there were people living there. Some of those people were in essence pushed aside. And so, you can kind of see, and again, that's what I always say. I like to try my best. And I don't always succeed at this, but I try my best to see both sides. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, and I'm going to, fully give into this bias. I struggle to see the Palestinian side. I just do. Because basically time and time again, Israel has made attempts at giving peace, attempts at saying, hey, let's compromise here. You can have this land, you can have that land, and all this kind of stuff. And it's always rejected. Yeah. And they have this little motto that they say, from the river to the sea, which is basically from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. And it's an expression that they want to wipe out all the Jews that are in Israel. Yeah. And so that's not necessarily very neighborly. No, it's not very friendly. And then again, you have the attack that they did on October 7th. And basically from what I have read, and I'm not going to say that I'm the most well-read person on this. I'm definitely not. But what I have read is that Israel is basically saying, we're going to basically take out Hamas, and we're not stopping until our hostages are back. Mm. And their hostages are not back, so they keep going.
Yeah.
Now, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and as a terrorist organization, they use civilians as shields. They place themselves underneath hospitals or schools, and, even Israel, I give it to them. They flat out said, here's where we're going to attack, get out. And then Hamas said, no, we're not going to do that, and then civilians died. And it's a real shame. And nobody likes to see what we're seeing. Yeah, and you want to try to look at both sides. But again, I really struggle to see the Palestinian side.
Right.
And so I'll be pretty honest about that. But at the same time, it leaves us as a Christian group as kind of posing this question, like, okay, so what should we do, and who should we kind of go for, and how should we go for it? And I think that at the end of the day, I personally think that Israel is in the midst of what would be considered a just war. Now, I know that there's an awful lot of collateral, and that's unfortunate. That's sad. Nobody wants to see the loss of life. Nobody wants to see death or any of that kind of stuff. But again, I think it always comes back to the fact of, regardless of which way you want to view this, even if you're like out there screaming, at your phone or radio or whatever it is right now, saying, Pastor Chris, you need to be, pro-Palestine or whatever it happens to be, realize, like, at the end of the day, from a Christian standpoint, our action tends to be the same, which is to say, who's right in front of us that needs our care? Mm-hmm. Our good works as Christians are for the sake of our neighbor. And I know that sounds very strange, talking about big, massive world events and world wars and all that kind of stuff, with all these things going on. And it can be scary times, for sure. But at the same time, it goes back. Like I'm sorry, but a protest over here is not going to stop a war between two nations that really don't care what I think. Mm-hmm. However...
No.
If I come across somebody who has experienced the horror of that war that needs help, I am here to help them. Mm-hmm. And if there were to become a way to send, food or clothing to some of these places that have experienced warfare, well, I might be able to work on doing something like that as well. So, kind of looking at a Christian perspective of this is, again, really challenging. But I personally believe, on my front, that Israel is waging a just war against a nation that really tried to hurt it and kill it and still wants it to die. Mm-hmm. And again, I think what we're seeing, what we are beginning to see out there in terms of the debates and the protests, and look, everybody, it's America. We have a right to protest peacefully and honorably, and I think that can be a good thing. But I think it's much better to actually sit and talk with people and converse with them and actually try to understand them. Kind of actually, I know, like 2 weeks ago, right? Kind of like one of our discussions that we had 2 weeks ago. sitting with somebody who shares an opinion or a view that's different than us is very, very hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's very, very challenging. We want to correct them. We want to, jump down their throat. We want to do whatever it happens to be. But I think a huge part of the problem in the world, and I'm certainly not saying it's the biggest problem or anything else, but I think a huge problem is the fact that as people, we are beginning to see that we're starting to fail at this.
Mm-hmm.
We're failing to have the ability to sit down next to somebody who disagrees with us.
Yes.
And at times it's even the smallest of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the whole thing with this whole Israel-Palestine thing is like, I mean, I'll be honest, I've listened to a few podcasts and not really whole podcasts, but like even like short videos of people trying to explain the Palestinian side. But again, I just can't wrap my head around it. There's something hold on, but I'd love to sit next to and talk to one, but I just haven't really done that. I haven't really had time either, but I mean, so if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're like big pro Palestine, come talk to me. I'll listen. Yeah. I might not agree with you, but I'll listen.
Yeah. It's definitely something that, and I don't know if I would say, I see a lot of people in my generation and some people in the generation, everybody really, that people really just want to hear what they believe. They want other people just to agree with them. And that's one reason why social media can be really scary, because I see people all the time who post stuff like, or something like particularly like horrible parenting, someone saying, well, this happened and it's clearly the parents' fault why their child is doing something horrible. But then they have 150 other people who have horrible children who are saying, oh, no, you're doing the right thing. You're good. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, someone needs to tell them that they're wrong, but they're not going to listen because they got all these people who they're in the same, they're in the same denial and they all just want to do that. But a lot of times, it makes us feel good to post something, get a bunch of likes, have a few people argue with us, and then a bunch of people tell them to shut up in the comments. And it's just, it's harder to have a sit down one-on-one conversation with somebody and actually hear what they're saying. And, actually have to acknowledge each other besides just clicking on something and saying, like, you're stupid, and then, like, running away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So that was the kind of the thing I wanted to bring up. And I know that was rather quick, and I know, we're really not, venturing deep into the weeds. But again, I don't think there's a clear cut, as a Christian, you have to be on this side or that side. I think it's more just, weighing out and saying, okay, is Israel justified in what they are doing, or is Hamas justified in what they're doing according to the way you're reading it, seeing it, how you're doing it, and what makes it? Because again, every nation has a sword, right? God-given sword to wield. They can do that. This is like, so when we went to war and have gone to war in the past, even us as Americans, we have to decide, is our country waging war on whoever it is in a justified manner? Or is it something that's really, really bad and we need to maybe take a step back? Yeah. And that is a honest conflict. But it's also true that a government can wage war. So
yeah, and I don't know. I think I always just kind of have the feeling of there are probably things probably things we don't know because we're not there and we don't know. So it's hard to. I try to take everything like that with a grain of salt or maybe a mound of salt. I don't know, but just making sure that because you really can't ever tell 100% how things are going there. And when people say they're repressed, well, do we know every side of the story? And so it's hard to say this group is 100% correct. It's like I don't know.
And I mean, that's like saying that politicians are really truthful and honest, right? It's like
no, there's just no.
It's like every time you feel like you found a politician that's very truthful and honest, you find out something like later down the road, you're like, you know, maybe not. So,
it's to get to a certain space, to get to war, there's got to be some bad things that have happened to get to that point.
Absolutely. I was actually talking to somebody earlier today. about this because I was looking through headlines, and I always one of the things I do is I always go to like Christian Post, right?
Okay.
And I look at like their headlines, and they were talking about how this one pastor is, and I guess he had some fame somehow, some way, but he had been accused of like identity theft, and he was like pretty much going to trial or whatever about it, and so. I was talking about this, and so what I started talking about was the fact that, like first of all, there's bad apples everywhere, right?
Oh yeah.
There's bad apples every single place that there is. But one of the things that's fascinating is, and this is I shouldn't say fascinating, it's awful is what it is. It's really awful. But people that are, for lack of a better term, bad people are up to no good, if you want to say.
Right.
They're up to no good. They tend to try, anyway, to get into professions that will enable them to better do the things that they want to do that are no good. Mm-hmm. So for instance, it's a kind of a known fact that people that are prone to say things like, boy, I don't even want to go there, but things like almost like pedophilia,
yeah.
will try to get professions that enable them to be around children.
Yeah.
Now, we have a pretty awesome vetting system. So, it's not perfect. Nothing is 100% perfect. And every now and again, a story comes, through, and it's really sad and unfortunate. But for the most part, we have a pretty good vetting system that kind of actually analyzes this. But I mean, again, this is where, you get a person who wants to be a certain age school teacher or something, and they're up to no good. Well, the same thing is true even of pastors. And I know that's hard to believe because we're all good, but the reality is that pastor as a profession means something. And it means you're with a group of people. At times, those people are very, very vulnerable, and you are in a position to where if you really wanted to, you could take advantage of that. And so people that are, dare I say, into things like identity theft, things that are, that require a little bit, a little bit of vulnerability, all of a sudden you can see somebody who becomes a pastor, and that's actually their main intent. It's an awful, atrocious thing.
Yeah.
And you do see them every now and again. It does not mean that the whole church is corrupt. It does not mean that, the sky is falling. But what it does mean is that we have to vet these people.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, allow me to explain what I had to do. So when I was at seminary, and again, I don't know how it is nowadays, but when I was at seminary, I actually had to see basically a psychiatrist for so many weeks. Mm-hmm. I had to have these personality exams, all my, my Myers-Briggs, but even more than that, I had this massive 16 PF, which is a personality profile that we all had to do. We had all these big things that we had to do, and we had to meet with somebody, and he assigned us classes that we had to go to for various things. So I had to go to a class on conflict management. I had to go see the psychiatrist for so many sessions or whatever. Like, they do all these things to make sure that, and again, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. There's always going to be somebody that finds a way to, the crafty person that slips through the cracks. But, it is something that's really important to know. Again, as a pastor, I should never be asking you what your social security number is. I just don't need to know that.
Yeah.
No. I do not need access to your bank.
Yeah, that's good to know for everybody listening.
Yeah, I mean,
don't need to
put the kibosh on that one.
Stop trying to give Pastor Chris
just
bank
stop
account
it.
numbers.
Just stop giving me the routing number, and it's on the bottom of your check.
You're trustworthy here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but it is true though. It's one of those things. Like, you look at when you see, a lot of times when you see pastors go down for doing nefarious things, and it's always some big headline. And then you kind of go back to it and you go, well, okay, that makes sense. Like, if they were really up to no good. Now, I'm not talking about the crimes of circumstance, or, this pastor fell because, he he was in the midst of some turmoil and did this thing or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the guys that are like they become a pastor and like, this is what I'm going to do. And it's like some awful, evil thing.
Right.
You know, that's what I'm talking about. Like the ones that are like gunning for it. And again, there are those that are out there. And they're in every profession. Yeah. They're in every profession.
Well, I think that, jokingly the other week I was talking about how, the whole muffin challenge thing.
Oh, yeah.
The pumpkin spice. How I have a very, very little amount of power and not a ton of people listen to this podcast, but I could leverage a few people to make me pumpkin spice muffins. And I did it.
You did it.
And I feel no remorse.
You shouldn't. It was fun.
It was fun. But you imagine people who really have a lot of influence on others.
Yeah.
And it's very easy if you're somebody who, wants to take advantage, wants to take advantage. I mean, that's the experience which I know I've shared it with you and a few people, but the experience I had before coming to St. John's was I had a guy who he found out about me through a friend and messaged me, and he said that the church wanted to hire me as a music person, and because his whole dream was that they could have an orchestra of like a whole concert band, and I arrange music. I have a big band, and ideally, I could do that if that's what he wanted. So I met with the elders, did the whole, we did this whole thing. I started going to the church and because it was local, so I was going to it.
Yeah.
And every interaction we had was over the phone or in person. So it wasn't, hey, I just have a quick question for you. And over text, it was like, you need to come to my office tonight.
Yeah.
So I'd come to the office and it would just be like, a 5-minute conversation. It's like, really? I had to drive all the way here for that? And after 6 months, the whole idea was I arranged this whole Easter service with a whole concert band. Basically, we had trumpets, trombones, and French horns, flutes, clarinets, the whole thing. And afterwards, that was the whole, the elders, that's going to be the deciding factor. So I'd been doing this 4 months. And then, so after that, I asked him, what was the verdict? Because they had a meeting. And he's like, well, we'll talk about it later. I'm like, what is that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
And then he started acting like, what are you talking about? What's going on? I'm like, what do you mean what's going on? This was the thing. You're supposed to make the decision now. Yeah. And so he met with me, and he just kept talking in circles. And I finally said, is anybody interested in hiring me? And he said, no, they've never actually wanted to hire you. And so this guy had led me on. This was after, and so I actually had a commitment, a concert that we were going to do in 2 months. So I had to stay kind of around for another 2 months to do this commitment because I committed to it. And but the guy, it was that burned me out for quite a while. Yeah. To be honest, I had a hard time going to church for at least a year. And it was just, he used, and when I look back, it's like I have no record of him talking to me because he made sure he only talked to me in person or on the phone where, there was no email, no texting. Yeah. Yeah. He made sure of it. So, and even the elders, one of them is kind of a family friend, and he really didn't understand what was going on because the stories he was hearing from him was very different from what I was saying, and there was no evidence of anything. Yeah. So it was a very that was a really tough situation. The guy, he really he took to it. And I guess if anything with the story, about 2 years later, we found out that he was doing some things with some people, a lady in the church that he shouldn't have been, and he got let go. Yeah. And so, which he should be. So I guess there's some sort of poetic justice in there, but it's sad all around. I don't sit there and go, I hope horrible things for him. But he did, he definitely, he knew he had some pull, and he used that pretty much in every aspect, and all the other things. He's around this area. I see him, and he definitely, he uses the fact that he's a pastor to get a lot of advantages
Sure.
with people. So
Yeah.
makes me sad. Again, there's no proof of it. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
nothing
But
I can
you
do.
hear stories like that. And I mean, that's not, I wish I could say, oh, that's the first time I've ever heard a story like that, but it's not. And that's, but again, it kind of goes back to it. And, I mean, I do think that, again, just to kind of separate this out, there is a difference between somebody who either does something unintentionally or they really don't think or feel like they're, lying or deceiving versus somebody who obviously is and they know what they're doing.
Right.
Again, you got to make that distinction because, like, look, mistakes happen. People make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Boy, do you? No,
Yeah, I know, right? But you just don't. You don't want to. You don't want to be like, yeah, oh man, that person's evil. They made a mistake. Well, people make mistakes all the time. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people that like they're utilizing their power for a form of like sin or nefarious deeds.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that's and again, you hear stuff like this happening, and it does happen, and it's truly unfortunate.
It is, and I have to say, as someone who grew up playing in church, like I played drums since I was in middle school all the way through. You spend a lot of time backstage. I hate saying backstage because it's not a stage necessarily.
Yeah.
But you spend a lot of times, behind the curtain. No, that's not even right either.
The Wizard of Oz.
But you see a lot of things that. I mean, like we had a worship minister when I was in high school that he would just kind of say things that you're like, what? It's like, how can you, and it was things that you're like, well, that's like very conflicting with being a Christian if you believe that. Mm-hmm. And you just be like, oh, I don't know. And you're like, okay. and there's just things like that you kind of saw, but other people in the congregation really didn't see.
Yeah.
But I will say, I could tell a long list of many people that I've experienced because when I was in college, I started being asked to play a bunch of places. So I played dozens and dozens of churches throughout the year. But I will say, you're a very stand-up guy, and I've always
Oh man, my head's gonna be so big I can't fit out your door. See?
No, but really, I mean, you love theology, and you take that very seriously, and you are like it's never to me. I can tell you're really nerdy about it to a point. No offense, that it's like you just really love it, and it's not a tool to get what you want.
Yeah.
From people.
Oh yeah. I do love theology.
You do.
Well, thanks.
Well, you're welcome. I just thought I should.
You're a pretty great guy too.
Well, thanks. I do appreciate that, but I figured it doesn't hurt to reassure people that I don't want to say all this stuff like, oh, I've seen so many things behind the that no one knows about, and then be like, well, what about Pastor Grant? No, he's a great guy. Yeah.
All right. So what is the question for there's no such thing as a dumb question?
Okay.
I got it. So let's do this.
Feels a little weird after all our conversations, but
I don't know.
This did occur to me. Kneeling.
Yes.
Catholics do it a lot.
Uh-huh.
We do it for communion, right? Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much it. Unless, of course, I'm in the contemporary service because I'm the contemporary DBG.
Yeah, that's right.
DPG.
Something
and so,
like
that. So I mean, maybe, I don't know if you guys do.
So kneeling
during the other service.
I mean, kneeling has a very interesting. I wouldn't say it has an interesting history because like it's obviously I don't know all the history of kneeling, but within like Lutheran circles, what's really fascinating to me is actually the new invention of like Lutherans, and not just Lutherans, but in fact a lot of churches in terms of church movements, is not kneeling. Kneeling has been around for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And kneeling even during certain parts of the service. And in fact, if you actually look in our, and again, this is kind of to reiterate some of the things that we've talked about in the past, but like if you open up your hymnal, you'll see certain things in red letters. Those are called rubrics, and it literally is Latin for red. It's like the red letters. And that's your instructions for what you're supposed to do. And you'll actually see kneeling in there quite a bit. Kneeling is actually an option for very, very often parts of all kinds of aspects of service. The new thing on the block is actually sitting.
Yeah.
If you go if you go back in time far enough, like if you went back to like say Luther's time, and I love the movies that like show like Luther's time and they're all like sitting in pews and stuff. Like no, like they had pews and stuff to sit in, but they were supposed to stand for most of the service.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The idea was that you were standing because of your respect for the gospel message. And so you stood most of the service. And so like sitting during parts of the service is actually kind of the new kid on the block.
Yeah.
But kneeling is certainly a big thing, a popular thing. A lot of churches will have like kneelers on their pews. They're kind of cool. They like flip out.
They are cool.
They do. They flip out and then you can like kneel. And a large part of kneeling is it puts you in a great position for things like prayer. But again, kind of going back to our vulnerability aspect, it is a submissive, humble position. Mm-hmm. It's not one where you're in authority. It's not one where you're towering over somebody. It's not one of arrogance. But to kneel is to place yourself in a humble position. And even as you pray, you are, exposing your neck, which is a lot of times, that was a way of basically saying, look, I'm so peaceful, you can kill me if you have to. Like, and I know, and again, I know that we don't look at it like that, but like, think about, have you ever wondered
we're not
why
carrying swords around?
Well, like seriously though, like, have you ever studied like the history of bowing? Like, this is what bowing is all about. Like you're exposing your neck. And yes, I realize that's super ancient and yada, 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 because we're not carrying around big swords. But at the same time, like the meaning, the humbleness is there. And praying is the same way. Like you are kneeling and a lot of times going in prayer or meditation, and you are basically, humbling yourself before God. Mm-hmm. And so it's that act of reverence. It's that act of humbleness. It's the act of putting yourself low so that you can reemphasize the point of just how high your God is.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. It is interesting.
So, but you guys, you don't do any kneeling during the service in traditional, right?
We just don't have kneelers. We don't have any.
That's the only real reason.
To me, it is.
Oh, okay.
No, a lot of people will stand or sit and all that kind of stuff. But again, yeah, you're right. The only place we have actual kneelers is actually in the communion rail.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to go to my office, I have something known as a prie-dieu. And a prie-dieu is a Latin name for a prayer kneeler.
Oh.
I did not buy said prayer kneeler. I built it out of scrap wood.
Look at you building a prayer
Oh, no,
kneeler?
no, it's terrible. I always say
very uncomfortable.
well, it is actually, but it's not. Right? They don't design these things for comfort, and I didn't either because I didn't care.
You should feel a little bit of pain when you're talking.
I should a little bit of pain. Anyway, actually, yeah, it's so I built. So what I did is I bought this nice wood, like some oak wood, super nice stuff, and I bought it at like Menards or something. But anyway. But I was like, before I cut the nice wood, I want to see if I can build one out of like scrap wood. Mm-hmm. And so I did. But then I was like, good enough, And so then I never used the good wood. I think it's still in my garage somewhere, actually. and so yeah, it's like, so I got the one that I made for practice in my office. I have an old Thrivent shirt. That's for my kneeling pad there.
Of course you do.
Of course, Thrivent shirts. Hey, it's comfy on the knees.
It's
it's comfy
and
on the
comfy
knees.
for your future.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, and then I have the book I usually use for my devotions is called Treasury of Daily Prayer.
Treasures of Daily
Treasury
Prayer.
of Daily Prayer. I can't talk. I go through stints like that every now and again. It's terrifying.
I know. What's it called again, though?
The Treasury of Daily Prayer.
No, the actual the prayer kneeler.
It's called a prie-dieu.
Prie-dieu? Okay.
Yeah.
Dang, that sounds really elegant.
Yeah. Here, I'll look it up and then I'll tell you how to spell it because obviously I don't know how to spell it.
That should be like a youth fundraiser where we're like, we're selling Pray-Do's.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Who wants one in their home?
Absolutely.
You know? Little fold-out Pray-Do, like right on your couch or something. Yeah.
All right. It is called a Pray-Do, and it is Pried, and it's another word, Dieu. So Priedeu.
I-E. It's a separate word? So it's like pray, do, like do pray.
Yeah, well,
I guess that's a different
the do is the Dieu, the Pray-Do. The do is actually a form of the Latin word for God, and it literally means pray to God.
Pray to God.
But
It sounds like pray, do, like eat, do, you know, or like.
But it's actually a prayer kneeler.
Wow,
So,
that
now
looks
that's
really
not.
nice.
I'm showing him pictures now.
Yeah, they're very
mine
nice.
looks like this, except for it's made out of scrap wood, and that's a Thrivent shirt on the bottom there.
Yeah, there is one made of gold though.
Yes.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's not mine.
That's very interesting. That seems. I mean, I have to say, I know you're not bragging because you're like downplaying with the Thrivent shirt, but that's like a pretty. That's like a pretty boss move for like. I don't just pray. I actually have a piece of furniture for that is dedicated to praying.
Yeah. Shouldn't we all have such a thing?
I think we should. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know those existed, and I didn't know I needed one.
Well,
So,
now you do.
yeah.
Next thing you know, we're going to be like building one,
That's what I'm saying. Pray dues. We need to do a fundraiser.
do a fundraiser to build them. To be honest with you, like I always wanted one, and then like I said, I built this one, and again, I was going to make a real nice one. I just never did. But like, I'll be honest with you, it seriously is one of those things where I like look back and I go, man, how did I live without this thing? Like I really? Oh, I love it.
This is.
This really
is one
love
of the
it.
best podcasts we've ever done. You legitimately feel like you can't believe you prayed without it.
Well, I mean, it's not that I can't say I've never prayed without. I mean, of course, I pray all the time.
No, I get that. I mean,
and this I don't have one at home, so it's like at home I pray, whatever.
Let me put it this way in like an easy term. I have a machine that I bought for $20 that inflates balloons very, very quickly. And if you've ever made a balloon arch, which my wife wants to do for every birthday party.
Yeah.
Every time I use that machine, all I do is sit there and go, this is the greatest thing in the world. And I just sit there and think about how it's probably, if not almost the best invention ever made, because it saves literally hours upon hours of work. Now that's not, but that's just a silly thing. But I didn't know this thing existed before we talked about this.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know talking about kneeling was going to come to this. And now to find out there is a piece of furniture that is dedicated to actually praying. And you are like, I don't even want to live without it now.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, yeah.
This is amazing. This is
okay.
huge.
So I mean, and this is an interesting topic too. Like, it's a question of like, well, what do you do for your devotions? Like, how do you do it? How do you, and like, so for me, I thought about this for a long time, and I mean, really, golly, I'd say 2018, 2019, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So what I always have talked about the treasury of daily prayer. It is my favorite by far. If you go through the entire book, you will read all the Psalms twice. You will read 80% of the Old Testament and 100% of the New Testament. And so if you read this thing in 1 year, and it's meant to be, it's separated into your church seasons and all that kind of stuff, that's what you read. So every day you have a psalm, every day you have an Old Testament reading, every day you have a New Testament reading. It also has a piece of writing. It also has a prayer for every single day. And then it has a suggested reading in the Book of Concord, which we can get to that another time. But like the Book of Concord is like our confessional document. So it's a pretty hefty document. And so, if you do this, you'll read the entire thing in a year, which is a good thing, especially for a pastor to do, right? To read their confessional document in a year. And so at some point in time, I started organizing my day, and I started saying, instead of organizing my day around work, I should really organize it around prayer. And so I would start every day with a psalm and then a prayer, And then right before lunch, I would do it with the Old Testament reading. And then right before I ended my day, I would do the New Testament and prayer. And like, so my whole work day is actually organized around my devotional life, which I really like. And I'm not perfect. There's times whenever it hits 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever it is, and I'm like, oh yeah, I still have to read my Old Testament reading too. And there's other times whenever I get home and go, oh man, I forgot to read my New Testament reading because, this happened and that, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you like I am so holy and perfect. I'm not. I mess up all the time.
But the dread sets in that you're going to have to do this without your pray-do.
Well, yeah, that's the
like,
worst.
Oh, gosh, I got to do this like sitting in a bed or something.
Yeah, but I mean, it is true though. Like I just love the aspect of like, okay, I'm going to stop everything I'm doing, and like here I'm going to go over here to this, the pray-do, and I'm going to kneel and I'm going to read my text and I'm going to, pray and like. I just love it. Like I said, I absolutely love it. I don't know how I lived without this thing. Like, it's just fantastic.
Because you know what? I think that is even. I mean, I think a lot of times people talk about religion and being a Christian and stuff. How it's like you should be with God all the time, and you should be thinking about it all the time. You should be praying to yourself like throughout the day all the time. But there is something to be said about a literal spot that you're like. Oh yeah, I mean that's why. I don't know. This might open a can of worms, but isn't that kind of why we have church? Is to have a set place and time that it's like every week we go to church, and we have that moment, and it's just so to have a pray-do or something that's like in your home or somewhere where it's like I'm going to go do my devotionals.
I need to build another one for the house. I really do, but I just haven't.
But it's just such. I don't think there's anything. I think that's kind of a brilliant idea. I really do because, it's the same way, and I hate because my world is music, so I relate everything to music.
Yeah.
But when I meet someone who says, I signed my kid up for band, and they're just really struggling, and it's just not, just not for them. And I'll go, do you have a practice space set up? And they go, a what? Do you have like a spot with a chair and a music stand and like their books in one spot of the house where they can always just go sit down and start practicing? And they're like, no. Like, well, you're not really setting them up for success. Like, because they don't have a place, what are they going to sit on their bed with a big clunky instrument and try to play? It's not comfortable. Yeah. And so they don't want to practice. And with this, it's like, I mean, not that you necessarily have to have one to be a good Christian, but for some people, it might be a great thing to have just as a
absolutely
reminder throughout.
Absolutely. They sell these ones, and I actually, my original intention was to build one where you can actually fold it up.
Oh, yeah. A portable pray-do.
Yeah, it's kind of portable, but it sits a little closer to the wall so that the one end, the kneeler part, doesn't like stick out where you can trip on it.
Yeah.
I have not found that to be a big issue with mine, though, like because I have it kind of off in the corner anyway, so it's like, it's not a big deal. But
why has this been such a secret that no one's ever...
I don't know. It's right there in my office. Like, I just don't talk about it. Like, you know, every now and again, one of the confirmation kids will ask about it. I'll be like, that's what it is. But, but other than that, it's just in my office.
Do you ever get into conversations with other pastors about pray-dos or no? Like, oh man, I just got the newest pray-do from.
Yeah, well, I've never. I can't say as I've ever had a big discussion about it, but I do know that a lot of pastors have them. I mean. Yeah. We had Pastor Raditz on here the other day. He had one of the fancy ones that folded up.
Really?
Oh yeah. I didn't know. His folded up and everything. It was super nice.
And he was keeping it a secret. He never told me.
He never told you?
Because I was a commoner. No, I'm just kidding.
Just a commoner. Don't know what a pray-do is.
This is mind blowing. I had no idea that this was going to come up because I didn't know it existed. I just thought, kneeling. What's with those crazy people always getting up and down? And then it turns into this whole man. Yeah, I didn't know.
Oh yeah. Well, tomorrow when you come out to church for Wednesday night service, you have to like jet back to the office. I'll show it to you again. It's not very pretty. It's not like. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world. It's just literally something I threw together to see if I could.
Yeah.
Because I was going to make a better one, and then I just never made the better one. So it's like, eh.
But you still love it. So that's.
Oh, yeah. I love the thing.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, that's note to everybody out there. Start checking out pray-dos.
Have you seen the prices of these things?
No,
though?
How much?
Like that's actually the problem. Like,
they're too
well,
expensive.
I mean, again, that's why you got to build your own.
Well, that's the question. This is the type of stuff that cracks me up too. Is like, are there cheap Amazon Basic brand Pray-Dos out there?
Okay, so whenever you get into the church world, there are some companies that sell things that are, well, they're just cheaper. Right. And like for instance, one of them I know would be like CM Almy. CM Almy is basically is kind of like a they sell things, they sell it cheap, and it's, I mean, for the most part it's fine. If you don't really care too much about it, it's perfectly fine.
Right.
It just depends. Yeah, here's one for 200.
200. Wow.
Yeah. I'm like looking at them right now. I mean, some of these things go way up there. Like this one's for 1,200.
Oh my gosh.
This one's for 1,100.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I mean, and that's that one's 450. It's pretty basic.
I mean, not to sound. I mean, I'm not like a great woodworker by any means, but those look fairly simple to like kind of put together.
Yeah, now you know why I built my own.
Yeah, exactly.
Out of scrap wood.
Interesting. My goodness. Well, this is very eye opening. I feel like if you posted a picture of a Pray-Do and then posted, can you tell me like what this is called or what the name of this is? I guarantee. I don't think a lot of people would know what it is.
Well, you're not. I don't think you're wrong.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, then maybe that's another. Our next social media challenge.
Yeah, actually, thinking about CM Almy and all this, like, I thought it was super funny because I went to that Spirit Halloween.
Yeah.
As I was preparing for Halloween and everything.
Yeah.
And I went there and they had a shirt like to dress up to be a priest. And what I thought was funny is
was it on sale too?
It was obviously fake. It was like hokey. It didn't look like it was constructed very well. It was $29.95, $30. A brand new clergy shirt is $25.
You can buy a real one.
You can buy a real one for cheaper than the fake costume you can at Spirit Halloween.
Although I really do think you need to get one and then wear it once and see if or just around Halloween you should wear it and just see if anybody can notice that like it's not it's a costume and not a real.
Oh
one.
Man, it looks so bad.
I'm sure, but that's why it'd be so funny though. Even if you could even tie it into the sermon somehow and say like this is a costume that costs more than the actual shirt.
Right. Well, and that's just it. Like I couldn't believe it. Like.
Was it just the shirt, or was it like the whole pants and everything?
No, it was just the shirt. It was a clergy shirt. Okay. Like, I think they called it a priest shirt or something.
That's
I mean, they didn't.
So funny.
But yeah, like, you go to CM Almy, it's like $24.95, and actually sometimes they have sales. It's like $19.95. I remember once they had a sale. Like if you bought 5, you got them for like $18 or something. I bought a bunch. Like because
stock up.
Well, yeah. I mean,
what are you not going to use them?
Exactly. Like, exactly. So yeah. I bought a bunch of them, so I have a bunch of clergy shirts. So yeah,
that is really hilarious. But we should check maybe in the next couple of weeks before Spirit of Halloween is like gone or packed back up. Maybe it's already.
I think I saw them like the big crate things out there.
Oh darn! See, I don't know, but it's too bad. If we could get one for like 75% off or something, and then you just have to wear it once just to see if anybody could notice, but. Well, I think that's all for that one. Now that we all know everybody needs to go out and start getting the
Pray-Dos. Yep.
So I think it's time for church chatter.
Gotta love church chatter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, it's been a busy time. Busy time.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think, like, we have so much. It's funny because, like, on the one hand, it's like you look and you go, okay, finally a little bit of relief. On the other hand, you're like, this is just the calm before the storm. Like right. This is just it. Like, so, I mean, obviously there's not a lot going on right now, not a lot going on next week, But boy, after that, boy howdy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we got our Thanksgiving Eve service coming up,
Yep.
which means we're all preparing for Thanksgiving, and myself included in that one, right?
That's right.
Got to get ready. And then on top of that, now the Sunday after Thanksgiving, now this is actually really cool. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, after the service, we always decorate the church.
Oh, right.
And we call this hanging of the greens, which I'll be honest with you, the first time I got here, I'd never heard that expression before. Now I hear it everywhere.
I've never heard of that.
I hear churches use that all the time, the hanging of the greens, because they're hanging like the greens, you know.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
It makes sense unless your last name is Green. I'm sorry, Green family. You've done something
Hanging of
bad.
the greens.
You've done something bad, and now you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
But, it's like, I saw that as a meme once. It said, I don't know who this Green family is, but I feel sorry for them. But yeah, so we decorate the church. We beautify the church in preparation for Advent. Now, what's funny about this is usually the first Sunday after Thanksgiving is the first Sunday in Advent. So we have to have the first Sunday in Advent without any decorations, which is always sad.
Oh, that is sad.
It's so sad. This year, though, Thanksgiving kind of falls a little earlier than normal. So we actually have like a week in between, which means we'll have service, which is pretty much the last Sunday of the church year. That's right, everybody. Our church New Year is Advent 1. Mm-hmm. But then church will be all decorated and pretty for the actual Advent 1.
Right.
How great is that?
It's great. I love Christmas. My favorite this whole time of year. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
I am fighting because my son was born in November. And I'm a big fan of decorating for Christmas, like September, or October. And but now my wife has found this as the excuse of you can't decorate till after his parties.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I don't want to be a curmudgeon. I don't want to be a curmudgeon, but you're not supposed to decorate until Advent starts, or at least as a precursor to Advent.
Okay.
And then you keep the decorations up until Epiphany.
There you go.
Once Epiphany hits, you're done. Take them down.
Which is what, mid-March?
No.
Oh, darn. Okay.
There are but 12 days of Christmas, good sir. 12.
Well, you can't say, you gotta keep them up a little longer than that. It's joy, for goodness sakes. They
good
did
sir.
studies.
Good
Good
sir.
sir.
Good sir. There are 12 days of Christmas.
Yes, there are. Yeah.
And then your decorations promptly come down.
Oh, well, see, now there's a study. They've literally done studies on this that they say, actually, we have an overwhelming amount of information or data or whatever that show that people who listen to Christmas music earlier are actually happier. I'm like, So the people who aren't sitting around going, it's not Christmas yet. All right. No Christmas. You think those people surprisingly aren't as happy as the people playing jingle bells and singing along in mid-September, I'm just saying, it's. I don't think you needed to spend money on a study for that one, but
all I'm saying is we do things properly.
Yes.
Says the guy who probably won't get his decorations down until well into February.
Oh, that's about the time.
I'll just be busy. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah,
it won't be anything personal. It'll just be,
yeah.
It won't. Actually, now that I said this on live on the podcast, I'm going to be like, man, I'm going to have to take it down real quick now because
there are but 12 days of Christmas.
There are but 12 days of Christmas. I love that meme, that was Downton Abbey meme where like the girl was like, we take our lights down on Epiphany. We do things here correctly. It's like absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, we're looking forward to that. We got New Member Sunday coming up. That's going to be always going to be exciting. So we just I'm trying to think of anything else that's like really going on at church. And I mean, we had our Harvest Fest. That was pretty awesome.
We had our first meal on Wednesday. I don't know if that's worth mentioning, but
we did. It was super exciting. I love, the Wednesday night group really is like a family. They're just like, and it's a lot of fun. And So last week they wanted to do a potato bar, and so I was like, okay, let's do this. And we did. We got like
got
leftovers and
organized.
stuff, and we not leftovers. I'm sorry. We got sides, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, like all the stuff for our potato bar. So it was a super amount of fun. Yeah, and I'm hopeful that we'll do that again at some point. But it's fun. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else.
I'm trying to think like of everything else that's going on. I mean, we're just all, like I said, it's like it's in a weird sense. It's like it's been so busy, it's been so crazy, but it's also like the calm before the storm. Like, we're getting ready for Advent to kick in. We're getting ready, and I mean, I know everybody loves the Christmas season, but let me tell you, as a pastor, it's brutal.
Yes,
like it's good. I mean, I love it. I love all the church seasons, and I love Advent as well, leading up to Christmas, but it still can be brutal.
Yeah.
So,
well, and October just ended, which was Pastor Appreciation Month and everything. So I hope you felt some appreciation.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Our church is awesome.
Yes, they are.
I mean, it really is. Yeah. I don't know how else to say that. Like, it's just, it's like, yeah. I mean, again, the church has been fantastic, and they really are very appreciative, and they're just awesome. We got an awesome church.
Yeah,
awesome church. So yeah.
Well, we'll be jumping into the crazy season for you.
Oh yeah, can't wait. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I that's all I had, and that's all you have.
That's all I got. Yeah.
So, well, everybody, thanks for joining us this fine and wonderful podcast time. It's been a couple weeks. I think we're back on the normal schedule, though. If I'm, as far as I know. So, anyway, God's blessings to all of you out there, and we'll see you soon. Bye.